Hi, I'm Marika from My Created Quilts, and the next installments of my double Irish chain sew along quilt along involves showing you how I finished putting the top together, and it includes a mitered corner. So I thought I would do a quick video on how to do a mitered corner if they intimidate you. They are quite easy, and I find it's an easier way to make sure you don't get wobbly borders if you miter the corners. So here is a quick tutorial, and I hope you find it helpful. Okay, so here I cut out a rectangle, and that's going to be our block. And these are going to be the borders with the mitered corner. So when you traditionally put a border on, many people measure the length and the width, and they measure the length, they put the border on, then they measure the width with the new border, and they just butt them up against each other. And that's fine. I've done many quilts that way. The problem is sometimes you get a lot of wobbles if you're not really accurate with your measurements. So a miter corner looks nice. It looks professional actually, and it just makes it easier. So I started by sewing on the piece. Now you have to make sure that your piece goes a good bit beyond. I would recommend that you go beyond the width significantly. I'd rather waste a little bit of fabric than be too short. So I've already sewed on this one. If you're not confident enough that you can eyeball your 1/4 inch, you can make a mark and then stop. I had to stop a little bit before because my mark was a little less than 1/4 inch. So I've sewed that down, and you're not going to press it yet. What you're going to do is fold that up, fold the seam out of the way, and then you're going to sew on your next piece. But again, you're going to go beyond where you need to be. And when you sew, you're going to stop at the 1/4 inch. Okay, so you're going to have that space there. So let's go to the sewing machine and sew this part on. Okay, so now we're ready. I have my 1/4 inch foot here. If you don't have a 1/4 inch foot, you can put some sort of marker, you can put some post-it notes, some masking tape, you can get a magnetic thing to put here to make your measurement. I just like to have the 1/4 foot. One thing to be careful about is if you're using a 1/4 foot and you're going to use somebody else's machine after, make sure you can use the same 1/4 foot because every one can be a little different from the other. Okay, so here I've got my seams pulled back. You don't want them sewn onto. And then I have this going over so I'm longer than I need to be. Some people like to start at the other end. I kind of have a better idea for myself because I can feel where the seam is and I won't go past it. So I'm very slowly going to back stitch. Okay, I'm not there yet. One more. If you go over one, undo it and then try again. It's really important that this part be accurate or your miter won't turn out. Okay, so I haven't pinned it. You really are supposed to pin it. I'm just not doing it because of time issues. And then here we go. We're just going to sew down the 1/4 inch seam. Now, if this was a real quilt, I would backtrack to make sure that my stitching holds, but I'm not going to bother now. And there we go. We have our corner sewn. So now I see I'm missing a stitch there, so I can go back and do one more. I can go a little bit further back than I did. So I'll just add some stitches. You've got to be careful because you can get a little over enthusiastic and go past what you wanted. So that takes a little bit of practice. And so there you go. Because I could have marked it with a pen too. And so now we'll go back to, we'll iron this, I'll show you how to cut it and then press it down for your really good miter. Okay, so we're back at the cutting table. I haven't pressed it yet because we're not ready to set the seams. Now what we need to do is cut diagonal. You can see where this meets in the corner and we're fine there. So imagine this is your big quilt. You're folding it like this. You want it to be exactly a 45-degree angle. Okay, so you want your seams to match. And then you see how this comes out even like that. So the next part is you need to pin it. You need to pin it well. It's easy to try and wing it, but it's just as easy to make a mistake when you're winging it. So see, this is where your 1/4 inch is here. See how it goes along? If we had just gone along, there would be your 1/4 inch. So we're just going to pin this a couple of times here. and then on the bottom, because I really don't want this to shift. This is where you do have to be picky, okay? You don't want to make mistakes here because your corner won't match. So you have this at 45 degrees. This is matched up. You take your ruler and you line it up here, okay? You want to make sure it's right on the line, right on the fold, right on the diagonal fold, and you're going to go down like that. So you take a marking tool and you draw that diagonal line. So what we're going to do next is go back to the sewing machine and sew this diagonal line, but only from this seam. We're not going to sew over the seam, because if you sew over the seam, then we end up with a bunch of other problems. So let's go back to the machine. Okay, here we have the sewn piece. It's a little bit of an optical illusion. It doesn't look straight, but it is. And you will see that I went right up to the quarter line, or I started at the 1/4 inch, and I went down. So now that we open it up to make sure it looks good, there's no puckers, okay? Because if there's a pucker, you need to take it out and do it again, because you're not going to be happy and you're going to say, this is why I don't do mitered corners. Okay, so you just make sure. So fold that back up again, like this. Okay, make sure it's even. And let's just cut that, line up my 1/4 inch. See, it is a straight line, it just doesn't look like it. And there we go. Okay, so now we're ready to press. You may have noticed that I use a wool mat. Some people have asked me if I like it. I do, I like it very much. They're not cheap, but I have heard that saddle blankets are similar and a lot less expensive. Some people I've read online get a really nasty smell when they've been using it. The overwhelming opinion from people who like their mats is that the people who get really bad smells from them is probably not 100% wool. I've never had any gunkiness, any smell, any odor or anything. It does smell like wet wool when you've been using it for a good while, but otherwise I haven't had any problems with it. The only thing I don't like, and it's not its fault, is that you can't put it directly onto the cutting surface because the heat and the steam can go through and it can ruin it. So I put it on top of this portable cutting board, and it works well for me. Okay, so now you have your miter. So you're going to open your seam. You're not going to put it to the side like you do traditionally with quilting. You open your miter seam, okay? But you only press up to the seam again, okay? You don't press the whole thing. So you very carefully take your iron and you just press that down right up to the seam, no further. Okay, you can see it, that's nice and flat there. Then you bring this down, okay? You're going to bring that down like this, and you're going to press that down. Oh, sometimes you gotta, there we go. And there you have your mitered corner. So you're just going to press the rest of the seams, and you'll see how nicely that comes out. Look at that. A perfect mitered corner. It wasn't hard. It's just a matter of making sure you're exact. If you're exact, you will not go wrong. And so that's how you do a mitered corner. I'll see you next time. Bye.